Everyone can make a mistake, but when a soldier makes a mistake, it can be very difficult to make up for it because in every war, people die. A soldier's mistake can lead to more people dying. When a soldier makes a mistake, it can lead to the death of his. Today, a soldier in the Russian army made a very big mistake. This mistake has disrupted the whole order of the Russian army, the Russian people of this mistake. There are many claims about the reasons for the Russian soldier's mistake. Press has focused on this issue. Let's talk about this extraordinary event. First of all, let's rewind the story a bit. Born in Russia, Maimed has been a very successful student all his life. He was receiving scholarships at the best schools in Russia. When his university education was about to end, something happened that changed his life. Putin decided to invade Ukraine and turned the lives of everyone living in Russia upside down. Maimed was drafted into the army as soon as he graduated. He was only 22 years old and he didn't want to die for Putin. He wanted to be a good academic and study science. He had so many dreams, but Putin destroyed them all. When Magami was drafted into the army, he was very scared because he was not ready to fight. Moreover, the training he received during this period was very poor. Magami men knew nothing about war tactics, but after a very short period of training, he was sent to war because the Russian army was constantly short of personnel. The successful operations of the Ukrainian army disrupted the entire organization of the Russian army. Many Russian soldiers were killed and wounded. It is also known that thousands of soldiers left the army or mutated because of these crises in the Russian army. Many soldiers were sent to the war zone without adequate training. Mohammed was one of them. Maimed experienced great fear in the war zone. He often had nightmares and woke up screaming many times he saw his friends dying. He thought that he too would die in this. This thought affected his psychology even worse. Maimed was a member of the 37th Separate Guard Motorized Rifle Brigade. He was posted as a sentry at a military base in Krysko, Blah, Russia. Krysko, Blaz is located on Russia's border with Ukraine. Mode was constantly afraid that the Ukrainian army would operate. That's why he could hardly sleep. He was always in the observation. He had a camera on his sniper rifle and tried to watch everything in the area. While Mode was standing guard, two soldiers started moving towards the Russian base. Mode saw these soldiers through his binoculars. The soldiers were wearing Russian army uniforms, but Mode was still afraid. He had not been told that these soldiers were coming, thought that these soldiers belonged to the Ukrainian army. He believed that they were dressed in the clothes of the Russian army in order to carry out a secret attack. He was so suspicious of the soldiers that he felt great fear. When the two soldiers moved towards the Russian base, Mogami decided to stop them. He called out, "Stop!" Who was there after Mogami shouted. The Russian soldiers thought that they had been captured and laid down on the. They could not answer Mode at all because they too were experiencing great fear. The soldiers decided to crawl forward, but Mode looked through his binoculars to see the soldiers moving forward. Ed was now completely convinced that these were enemy soldiers. He decided to open fire first. He shot the soldier in the back of the head. After one of the soldiers was dead, he decided to kill the other. He fired again and the Russian soldier was seriously wounded. Seeing this, the other sentries opened fire on Muhammad. The shootout between the soldiers soon ended. Russian commanders immediately arrested Mohammed. However, one Russian soldier was killed. During the shootout, the dead soldier was identified as Tenur G, a 19-year-old soldier from Tartan. The seriously wounded soldier was 22-year-old Velos K from Novo. However, this soldier also died in the hospital. An investigation into the incident has been launched. All commanders in the Kursk region have started to prepare reports on this matter. These reports are attracting a lot of attention in the Russian press. Two issues are particularly striking in the reports. The first one is that the Russian soldiers are in constant fear and panic. All Russian commanders say that the soldiers are experiencing great fear. This fear of Russian soldiers causes them to make mistakes all the time. And because of this fear, Russian soldiers often make mistakes on the battlefield. Many Russian soldiers never come out of the trenches during combat. This great fear of Russian soldiers is also damaging the reputation of the Russian army. The cowardice of Russian soldiers is talked about around the world. Putin claimed to have the strongest army but the Russian army is now seen as the most cowardly army in the world. The other information contained in the reports of the Russian commanders is much more interesting. Russian commanders claim that soldiers are suffering from psychological problems due to the fear they're experiencing. So why do these problems attract the attention of the Russian commanders? How can this problem affect the course of the war? Russian soldiers are in a constant state of panic on the battle. These soldiers are in the war zone for long hours every day. The war has been going on for almost a year, and the soldiers are physically exhausted because soldiers in the Russian army do not get enough food and cannot find a suitable place to sleep. The problem of sleep-ness experienced by Russian soldiers is now known throughout the army. Sleeping Russian soldiers are constantly waking up with nightmares. As a result of this situation continuing for a long time, Russian soldiers started to experience many psychological problems. According to the information in the report, many Russian soldiers often hallucinate. Russian soldiers have difficulty distinguishing between reality. The hallucinating soldiers start shooting at different places. As a result of these incidents, many Russian soldiers are reported to have. Russian commanders send the soldier with psychological problems for treatment. But now there are no more places in Russian hospitals. Russian soldiers are having difficulty overcoming this problem. Many accidents have occurred as a result of the soldiers' constant hallucinations. Russian commanders want the soldiers to be constantly given antidepressants to overcome this problem as soon as possible. However, this could lead to a decline in the soldiers' performance in the war. The Kremlin administration is trying to solve the psychological problems of the Russian soldiers due to excessive fear, but these problems are increasing day by day. Next, Ukraine war latest. NATO head says Bakhmut could fall, but it would not mean turning point in war. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said on March 8 that Bakhmut could fall in the coming days. However, he stressed that losing the city would not be critical. Despite Stoltenberg's claim that the capture of the city would not be a turning point in the war, he pointed out that Russia should not be underestimated. What we see is that Russia is throwing more troops, more forces, and what Russia lacks in quality, they try to make up in quantity, Stoltenberg said. Corresponding with Stoltenberg's statement, the Institute for the Study of War said in its daily report on March 7 that Russia is unlikely to generate operational effects if they capture Bakhmut. Furthermore, the ISW assesses that Russian forces likely lack the mechanized forces necessary to advance beyond Bakhmut, and the tactical assault detachments used in assaults against Bakhmut are likely unable to conduct maneuver warfare. Prior, on March 6, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin also said that the fall of Bakhmut would not be a significant setback for the Ukrainian military, adding that the city was more of a symbolic than strategic value. With tensions remaining high in the 7-month-long battle for Bakhmut, Ukraine decided not to withdraw troops from the city. President Volodymyr Zelensky emphasized in a March 7 interview with CNN that if Russia captured Bakhmut, they could go further, seizing other critical settlements in eastern Ukraine. Update on military aid for Ukraine. Armed Forces Commander-in-Chief Valery Zaluzhny reported meeting with 4 top Western military officers on March 7. Zaluzhny met with NATO's Supreme Allied Commander in Europe, U.S. Army General Christopher Cavalli, UK, as Chief of the Defense Staff Admiral Sir Tony Radakin, Polish Armed Forces General Rajmund Andrzejczak, and U.S. Army Lieutenant General and Commander of Security Assistance Group Ukraine Antonio Agudo. Zaluzhny informed them about the situation on the battlefield, particularly concerning Bakhmut. According to Zaluzhny, they also discussed the supply of military aid to Ukraine, including weapons and ammunition. Strengthening air defense and providing long-range weapons remains crucial, Zaluzhny wrote. Meanwhile, several updates were issued at the March 8 meeting of EU defense ministers in Stockholm. Defense Minister Oleksiy Reznikov said the main priorities for Ukraine are more air defense systems and 1 million rounds of ammunition. He also emphasized the importance of supplying Ukraine with more tanks so Kyiv could create an armored fist to propel its counteroffensive against Russia. At the same time, German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius confirmed the plan to provide Ukraine with 18 Leopard 2A6 tanks from Germany and 3 from Portugal by the end of March. The news was earlier reported by Der Spiegel, citing DPA news agency. Prior, on March 1st, Germany also pledged to increase ammunition production and weapons repair capacity for Ukraine. Additionally, at the same meeting, Stoltenberg stated that NATO member states have supplied Ukraine with 150 billion euros in aid since the beginning of Russia's full-scale war. This sum includes 65 billion euros provided to Kyiv in military aid. Ahead of the meeting with European Union defense ministers, Stoltenberg emphasized the need for the alliance to increase ammunition production. In addition, the European Union defense ministers have agreed to supply Ukraine with 1 billion euros worth of ammunition from their stocks, EU top diplomat Joseph Borrell said on March 8. The next stage concerning the aid package for Ukraine will be discussed when the EU foreign and defense ministers gather in Brussels on March 20th. The German government reported it handed Ukraine 2 additional Gepard self-propelled anti-aircraft guns. Berlin has also delivered 2 more border protection vehicles and 6 mobile antenna systems. 13 bridge-laying tanks Beaver and 500 SFP-9 pistols are being prepared for shipment to Ukraine, according to the government's update. Russia's continued attacks. Ukraine's military repelled over 100 attacks over the past 24 hours, the General Staff of Ukraine's Armed Forces reported in its morning briefing on March 8. The update stated that Russian forces are currently conducting offensives toward Kupiansk in Kharkiv Oblast and Lyman, Bakhmut, Avdiivka, and Shakhtarsk in Donetsk Oblast. Over the past 24 hours, Russia launched 24 airstrikes and 1 missile strike and fired 2 Iranian-made Shahd drones at Ukraine that were shot down. Russian forces also launched more than 60 attacks using multiple rocket launchers, the report said. According to the Sumy Oblast Military Administration, Russian forces attacked 2 communities in Sumy Oblast on March 7th. Russia used mortars and artillery to attack Bilopilya and Esmen communities. At least 45 strikes were recorded. However, no casualties or damages were mentioned. The Ministry of Defense reported that 2 Iranian drones launched by Russia from the northern direction were shot down at midnight on March 8th by Ukrainian air defense. For the first time since the start of the full-scale invasion on Feb. 24, no civilian injuries were recorded in Donetsk Oblast, according to Governor Pavlo Kyrylenko. However, the governor acknowledged that the situation remains tense. Russia also shelled dozens of border communities in Sumy, Chernihiv, and Kharkiv Oblasts over the past day.